Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how do you optimize performance for Amazon S3 storage? Your answer should be: performance for Amazon S3 storage can be optimized by distributing data across multiple S3 buckets or prefixes to avoid hotspots, using multi-part uploads for large object uploads, enabling transfer acceleration for faster data transfer, and leveraging S3 transfer acceleration for accelerated data transfer. Our next interview question is: what are AWS budgets and how do they help with cost management? Your answer should be: AWS Budgets is a service that allows you to set custom cost and uses budgets for your AWS resources and services. It helps with cost management by providing visibility into your AWS spending, alerting you when you exceed budget thresholds, and enabling you to track and control costs effectively. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Lambda at Edge and how does it extend the functionality of AWS Lambda? Your answer should be: AWS Lambda at Edge is a feature of AWS Lambda that allows you to run Lambda functions at AWS Edge locations in response to CloudFront events. It extends the functionality of Lambda by enabling you to customize content delivery, implement security measures, and enhance your experiences at the edge. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon S3 Select and how does it improve query performance for S3 objects? Your answer should be: Amazon S3 Select is a feature that allows you to retrieve only the data you need from S3 objects using SQL expressions. It improves query performance by reducing the amount of data transferred over the network and the compute resources required to process queries, especially for large objects. Our next interview question is: how do you monitor and analyze network traffic in an Amazon VPC? Your answer should be: network traffic in an Amazon VPC can be monitored and analyzed using features like VPC flow logs, Amazon CloudWatch logs, and third-party network monitoring tools. VPC flow logs provide detailed information about the traffic flowing in and out of your VPC, including source and destination IP addresses, ports, and protocols. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Direct Connect Gateway and how does it facilitate connectivity between multiple VPCs and on-premises networks? Your answer should be: AWS Direct Connect Gateway is a feature that allows you to connect multiple VPCs in different AWS regions and multiple virtual private gateways (VGWs) to a single Direct Connect connection. It facilitates connectivity between multiple VPCs and on-premises networks by providing a centralized hub for routing traffic. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, You can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: explain the difference between Amazon RDS and Amazon DynamoDB. Your answer should be Amazon RDS, that is Relational Database Service, is a managed relational database service that supports various database engines like MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, and Oracle. Amazon DynamoDB is a fully managed NoSQL database service that provides fast and predictable performance with seamless scalability. Our next interview question is: how do you handle backups and disaster recovery in AWS? Your answer should be backups in AWS can be handled using services like Amazon S3 for object storage, Amazon RDS for database backups, and AWS Backup for centralized management. Disaster recovery involves designing and implementing resilient architectures across multiple AWS regions, using services like AWS CloudFormation, AWS Disaster Recovery, and AWS Backup. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Lambda and how does it work? Your answer should be AWS Lambda is a serverless compute service that runs code in response to events and automatically scales to handle the load. You upload your code and Lambda takes care of provisioning and managing the infrastructure needed to run it. Our next interview question is: how do you ensure data security in AWS? Your answer should be data security in AWS involves implementing security best practices such as using IAM rules and policies to control access, encrypting data at rest and in transit, using services like AWS Key Management Service KMS, implementing network security using AWS security groups and NACLs, and regularly auditing and monitoring AWS resources for security compliance. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Elastic Beanstalk and how does it work? Your answer should be AWS Elastic Beanstalk is a platform as a service PaaS offering that simplifies the deployment and management of applications on AWS. You upload your application code and Elastic Beanstalk handles the deployment, capacity, provisioning, load balancing, and auto scaling. Our next interview question is: how do you optimize costs in AWS? Your answer should be cost optimization in AWS involves right-sizing instances, using reserved instances or saving plans for predictable workloads, leveraging spot instances for non-critical workloads, implementing auto-scaling to match resource uses with demand, and using services like AWS Cost Explorer and AWS budgets for monitoring and analyzing costs. Our next interview question is explain the difference between Amazon S3 and Amazon EBS. Your answer should be Amazon S3, that is Simple Storage Service, is object storage designed for storing and retrieving large amounts of data, while Amazon EBS, Elastic Block Store, provides block level storage volumes for use with EC2 instances. S3 is suitable for storing objects such as files, images, and backups, while EBS is used for block level storage attached to EC2 instances. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how do you monitor and optimize AWS costs using AWS Cost Explorer? Your answer should be AWS Cost Explorer allows you to analyze and visualize your AWS spending patterns, identify cost drivers, and forecast future costs. You can use Cost Explorer to create custom cost reports, set budgets and alerts, and optimize costs by identifying opportunities for savings and efficiency improvements. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon RDS read replicas and how do they improve database scalability and availability? Your answer should be Amazon RDS read replicas are copies of your primary RDS database instance that can be used to offload read-only queries and improve database performance. They improve database scalability and availability by providing read scalability, reducing the load on the primary instance, and serving as failover targets for read operations in the event of a primary instance failure. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Cloud Formation Drift Detection and how does it help maintain infrastructure consistency? Your answer should be AWS Cloud Formation Drift Detection allows you to detect and view differences between the desired state of your AWS infrastructure defined in cloud formation templates and the actual state of the deployed resources. It helps maintain infrastructure consistency by identifying and addressing configuration drifts and ensuring that resources remain in the expected state. Our next interview question is: how do you optimize performance for Amazon RDS databases? Your answer should be performance for Amazon RDS databases can be optimized by selecting appropriate instance types, configuring RDS parameters, optimizing database schemas and queries, enabling multi-AZ deployment for high availability, and leveraging read replicas for read scalability. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon VPC, flow logs, and how does it help with network monitoring and troubleshooting? Your answer should be Amazon VPC Flow Logs is a feature that enables you to capture information about the IP traffic flowing in and out of your VPC. It helps with network monitoring and troubleshooting by providing detailed logs that can be analyzed for traffic patterns, anomalies, and security events. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Glue and how does it facilitate data integration and ETL, that is extract, transform, and load? Your answer should be AWS Glue is a fully managed ETL extract, transform, load service that makes it easy to prepare and load data for analytics. It automatically discovers and catalogs data, generates ETL code to transform and clean data, and provides a managed Spark environment for scalable data processing. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is, what is AWS SysOps Administrator role and what are the primary responsibilities? Your answer should be the AWS SysOps Administrator is responsible for managing, operating, and maintaining systems running on AWS infrastructure. Primary responsibilities include provisioning, managing, and maintaining systems on AWS, implementing and controlling the flow of data to and from AWS, optimizing AWS infrastructure to improve performance and reduce costs, and ensuring security and compliance of AWS environments. Our next interview question is, how do you ensure high availability in AWS? Your answer should be high availability in AWS can be achieved through various methods such as deploying resources across multiple availability zones (AZs), using autoscaling to maintain instance availability, leveraging AWS Elastic Load Balancing for distributing incoming traffic, and designing fault-tolerant architectures. Our next interview question is, what is AWS CloudFormation and how do you use it? Your answer should be AWS CloudFormation is an infrastructure as code service that allows you to define and provision AWS infrastructure resources using JSON or YML templates. It automates the deployment and updates of AWS resources, making it easier to manage infrastructure as code. Our next interview question is, how do you monitor AWS resources and services? Your answer should be AWS offers various monitoring and logging services such as Amazon CloudWatch, AWS CloudTrail, and AWS Config. CloudWatch monitors performance metrics and logs. CloudTrail provides a record of API calls made in an AWS account, and Config tracks changes to AWS resources and evaluates resource configurations for compliance. Our next interview question is explain the difference between IAM policies and resource-based policies. Your answer should be IAM policies are attached to IAM identities, that is users, groups and roles, and define their permissions to interact with AWS resources. Resource-based policies, on the other hand, are attached directly to AWS resources, for example, S3 buckets, Lambda functions, and define who can access the resource and what actions they can perform. Our next interview question is how do you troubleshoot performance issues in AWS? Your answer should be troubleshooting performance issues in AWS involves analyzing CloudWatch metrics, examining logs using CloudWatch logs, identifying bottlenecks in the infrastructure, optimizing resource configurations, and considering scaling options such as vertical scaling, that is, resizing instances or horizontal scaling, that is adding more instances. Our next interview question is what is AWS Systems Manager and how can it be used? Your answer should be AWS Systems Manager is a management service that helps you automate tasks across your AWS resources. It provides features for patch management, automation, parameter store, session manager for cell access, and more. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is what is AWS Code Pipeline and how does it facilitate continuous integration and delivery CI/CD? Your answer should be AWS Code Pipeline is a continuous integration and continuous delivery service that automates the build, test, and deployment of code changes across various stages of release process. It integrates with other AWS services like AWS Code Build, AWS Code Deploy, and AWS Code Commit to create automated CI/CD pipelines. Our next interview question is what is Amazon CloudFront Cache behavior and how does it impact content delivery? Your answer should be Amazon CloudFront Cache behavior determines how CloudFront caches and serves content to end users. It includes settings like TTL, time to leave, cache control headers, query string forwarding, and origin response caching, which impact caching behavior and content delivery performance. Our next interview question is how do you ensure data integrity and authenticity in Amazon S3 using AWS KMS? Your answer should be data integrity and authenticity in Amazon S3 can be ensured by encrypting data using AWS Key Management Service KMS managed keys, enabling server-side encryption and verifying data integrity using cryptographic checksums and digital signatures. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Lambda concurrency and how can you manage it effectively? Your answer should be AWS Lambda concurrency refers to the number of simultaneous function executions allowed by Lambda. It can be managed effectively by configuring reverse concurrency limits, implementing concurrency controls in your application code, and monitoring and adjusting concurrency settings based on workload requirements. Our next interview question is, what are AWS VPC endpoints and how do they facilitate private connectivity to AWS services? Your answer should be AWS VPC endpoints allow you to privately connect your VPC to supported AWS services without requiring public internet access. They provide secure and private communication between your VPC and AWS services like S3, DynamoDB, and SNS, improving security and performance. Our next interview question is, how do you implement automated backups and recovery for Amazon RDS databases? Your answer should be automated backups and recovery for Amazon RDS databases can be implemented by enabling automated backups, specifying backup retention periods, taking manual snapshots for point-in-time recovery, configuring multi-AZ deployment for failover, and testing backup and recovery procedures regularly. Our next interview question is, what is AWS OpsWorks Stacks and how does it simplify configuration management? Your answer should be AWS OpsWorks Stacks is a configuration management service that provides managed instances of Ceph and Puppet for automating the configuration and management of EC2 instances. It simplifies configuration management by allowing you to define and manage stacks, layers, and custom cookbooks for automated provisioning and deployment. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is, how do you automate AWS infrastructure provisioning and management? Your answer should be AWS infrastructure provisioning and management can be automated using services like AWS CloudFormation for infrastructure as code, AWS Systems Manager for automation and orchestration of administrative tasks, and AWS Lambda for event-driven automation of tasks and workflows. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Elastic Load Balancing and how does it work? Your answer should be AWS Elastic Load Balancing automatically distributes incoming application traffic across multiple targets such as EC2 instances, containers, and IP addresses to ensure high availability and fault tolerance of your applications. It provides three types of load balancers, that is, classic load balancer, application load balancer, and network load balancer. Our next interview question is, how do you configure logging and monitoring for AWS resources? Your answer should be logging and monitoring for AWS resources can be configured using services like Amazon CloudWatch Logs, AWS CloudTrail, Amazon VPC Flow Logs, AWS Config, and AWS X-Ray. These services provide visibility into resource uses, events, configuration changes, and performance metrics. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Snowball and how is it used for data transfer? Your answer should be AWS Snowball is a data transfer service that enables you to transfer large amounts of data into and out of AWS using secure ruggedized devices. It provides Snowball Edge and Snowball devices that you can use to transfer petabytes of data offline to AWS data centers. Our next interview question is, how do you implement disaster recovery solutions in AWS? Your answer should be disaster recovery solutions in AWS can be implemented using services like AWS Backup for automated backup and restore of AWS resources, AWS Disaster Recovery DR services like AWS Site Recovery and AWS Storage Gateway for replicating data to a secondary region and designing multi-region architectures for high availability and fault tolerance. Our next interview question is, what is Amazon Route 53 and how does it work? Your answer should be Amazon Route 53 is a scalable domain name system DNS web service that translates domain names into IP addresses and routes internet traffic to the appropriate resources. It provides features like domain registration, health checks, traffic management, and DNS-based failover for high availability and fault tolerance. Our next interview question is, how do you automate instance patching and maintenance in AWS? Your answer should be instance patching and maintenance in AWS can be automated using AWS System Manager Patch Manager for automating and the patching of operating system on EC2 instances. It allows you to define patch baselines, schedule patching operations, and automate patch compliance reporting. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment tiers and how do they differ? Your answer should be AWS Elastic Beanstalk supports two environment tiers, web server environment tier for web applications and worker environment tier for background processing tasks. Web server environment tier provides load balancing, auto scaling, and web server configuration, while worker environment tier is optimized for long running background tasks. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is, How do you implement cross-region replication for Amazon S3 buckets? Your answer should be cross-region replication for Amazon S3 buckets can be implemented by enabling versioning on the source and destination buckets, configuring replication rules to specify which objects to replicate and to which destination, and ensuring appropriate permissions and encryption settings for data replication. Our next interview question is, what are AWS instance store volumes and how do they differ from Amazon EBS volumes? Your answer should be AWS instance store volumes are ephemeral storage volumes that are physically attached to the underlying EC2 instance. They provide temporary block-level storage that is lost when the instance is stopped or terminated. Amazon EBS volumes, on the other hand, are persistent block storage volumes that can be detached from and reattached to instances, providing durable storage that persists independently of instance lifecycle. Our next interview question is, how do you optimize cost and performance for Amazon EC2 instances? Your answer should be cost and performance for Amazon EC2 instances can be optimized by selecting appropriate instance types based on workload requirements, leveraging spot instances or reserved instances for cost savings, monitoring and right-sizing instances for optimal utilization, and implementing auto-scaling to dynamically adjust capacity based on demand. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Key Management Service KMS and how does it help with encryption key management? Your answer should be AWS Key Management Service KMS is a managed service that allows you to create, import, rotate, and manage encryption keys used to encrypt data stored in AWS services and applications. It provides centralized key management, integration with AWS services, and audit trails for key users. Our next interview question is, how do you configure AWS CloudWatch alarms for monitoring resource metrics? Your answer should be AWS CloudWatch alarms can be configured to monitor resource metrics such as CPU utilization, network traffic, and disk space, and trigger actions based on predefined thresholds or conditions. You can configure alarms to send notifications via Amazon SNS, trigger auto-scaling actions, or execute AWS Lambda functions in response to alarm state changes. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Code Deploy and how does it facilitate application deployment? Your answer should be AWS Code Deploy is a deployment service that automates the process of deploying applications to EC2 instances, Lambda functions, or on-premises servers. It allows you to define deployment configurations, specify deployment groups, and automate rolling updates or blue-green deployments with minimal downtime. Our next interview question is, how do you implement access control and permissions management in AWS IAM? Your answer should be access control and permissions management in AWS IAM can be implemented by creating IAM users, groups, and roles with granular permissions using IAM policies, defining least privilege principles, enabling multi-factor authentication MFA, and regularly reviewing and auditing IAM policies for compliance. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: what is AWS Trusted Advisor and how does it help improve AWS infrastructure? Your answer should be AWS Trusted Advisor is a service that provides real-time guidance to help you optimize your AWS infrastructure across cost optimization, performance, security, and fault tolerance. It analyzes your AWS environment and makes recommendations based on best practices and AWS architectural principles. Our next interview question is: how does Amazon ECS Elastic Container Service differ from AWS Fargate? Your answer should be Amazon ECS is a fully managed container orchestration service that allows you to run and manage Docker containers on a cluster of EC2 instances. AWS Fargate is a serverless compute engine for containers that allows you to run containers without managing the underlying infrastructure, including EC2 instances. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Cloud HSM and how does it help with data security? Your answer should be AWS Cloud HSM is a cloud-based hardware security module HSM service that provides secure key storage and cryptographic operations within a dedicated hardware security module. It helps you meet compliance requirements and protect sensitive data by securely generating, storing, and managing cryptographic keys. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon Elastic File System EFS and how does it differ from Amazon Elastic Block Store EBS? Your answer should be Amazon EFS is a scalable and fully managed file storage service that provides a simple, scalable, and highly available file system for use with EC2 instances. Amazon EBS is a block storage service designed for use with EC2 instances, providing persistent block storage volumes that can be attached to EC2 instances. Our next interview question is: how can you monitor and troubleshoot network performance in an AWS environment? Your answer should be network performance in an AWS environment can be monitored and troubleshoot using tools like Amazon CloudWatch, Amazon VPC Flow Logs, AWS Network Insights, AWS X-Ray, and third-party network monitoring solutions. These tools provide insights into network traffic, latency, and connectivity issues. Our next interview question is: what are AWS service quotas and how are they used? Your answer should be AWS service quotas allows you to view and manage your quotas for AWS services, such as the maximum number of resources you can create or the maximum rate at which you can make API requests. They help you understand your resource uses and request quota increases when needed. Our next interview question is, how do you automate AWS infrastructure provisioning and management? Your answer should be AWS infrastructure provisioning and management can be automated using services like AWS CloudFormation for infrastructure as code, AWS Systems Manager for automation and orchestration of administrative tasks, and AWS Lambda for event-driven automation of tasks and workflows. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how do you ensure compliance in AWS environments? Your answer should be compliance in AWS involves implementing security best practices using AWS config for evaluating resource configurations against predefined rules, leveraging AWS CloudTrail for auditing API calls, implementing encryption and access controls, and regularly auditing and monitoring AWS resources for compliance with industry regulations and standards. Here are 15 AWS certified SysOps Administrator Associate interview questions along with their answers. Our next interview question is, what is Amazon CloudWatch and how is it used in AWS? Your answer should be Amazon CloudWatch is a monitoring and management service provided by AWS. It is used to collect and track metrics, monitor log files, set alarms, and automatically react to changes in your AWS resources. Our next interview question is, what is an auto-scaling group and how does it work? Your answer should be an auto-scaling group is a collection of EC2 instances that are treated as a logical grouping for the purposes of automatic scaling and management. It automatically adjusts the number of instances in response to changing demand or conditions specified by the users. Our next interview question is, how can you encrypt data in Amazon S3? Your answer should be data in Amazon S3 can be encrypted using server-side encryption SSE with Amazon S3 Managed Keys SSE S3 AWS Key Management Service SSE KMS or server-side encryption with customer-provided keys SSE C. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Lambda and what are its benefits? Your answer should be AWS Lambda is a serverless computing service that allows you to run code without provisioning or managing servers. It automatically scales and manages the infrastructure required to run your code, allowing you to focus on writing your application logic. Our next interview question is, how does AWS Identity and Access Management IAM work? Your answer should be AWS IAM enables you to manage access to AWS services and resources securely. It allows you to create and manage users, groups, and roles to control who can access specific resources and what actions they can perform. Our next interview question is, what is Amazon Virtual Private Cloud VPC? Your answer should be Amazon VPC is a virtual network that you can define within your AWS account. It allows you to launch AWS resources such as EC2 instances into a virtual network that you define. You have complete control over your virtual networking environment, including IP range, address ranges, subnets, route tables, and network gateways. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is, what is AWS Certificate Manager ACM and how does it simplify SSL TLS certificate management? Your answer should be AWS Certificate Manager ACM is a service that provides SSL TLS certificates for secure communication between clients and AWS resources. It simplifies SSL/TLS certificate management by automatically provisioning, renewing, and deploying certificates for use with AWS services like Elastic Load Balancing, CloudFront, and API Gateway. Our next interview question is, how do you configure Amazon CloudWatch Events rules for automated event-driven actions in AWS? Your answer should be Amazon CloudWatch Events rules allows you to define event patterns or schedule-based rules to trigger automated actions in response to events in your AWS environment. You can configure CloudWatch event rules to invoke AWS Lambda functions, send notifications via Amazon SNS, or trigger AWS step functions workflows based on specific events or schedules. Our next interview question is, what is Amazon CloudFront Origin Access Identity OAI and how does it enhance content delivery security? Your answer should be Amazon CloudFront Origin Access Identity OAI is a feature that allows you to restrict access to your Amazon S3 origin bucket by associating a special CloudFront user identity with the CloudFront distribution. It enhances content delivery security by preventing direct access to S3 objects and enforcing access control policies through CloudFront distributions. Our next interview question is, how do you automate infrastructure deployments and updates using AWS CloudFormation? Your answer should be infrastructure deployments and updates can be automated using AWS CloudFormation templates to define and provision AWS resources as code. You can create reusable templates that specify the desired state of your infrastructure, including EC2 instances, VPCs, IAM roles, and other resources, and use CloudFormation to orchestrate and manage the deployment lifecycle. Our next interview question is, what is AWS config multi-account, multi-region MAMR aggregation, and how does it help with compliance and governance? Your answer should be AWS config multi-account, multi-region MAMR aggregation is a feature that allows you to centrally aggregate and view compliance and configuration data across multiple AWS accounts and regions. It helps with compliance and governance by providing a unified views of resource configurations, identifying non-compliant resources, and enforcing policies across your AWS organization. Our next interview question is, how do you configure AWS Lambda environment variables and how are they used in Lambda functions? Your answer should be AWS Lambda environment variables allow you to pass configuration values or sensitive information to your Lambda functions without hard coding them in your code. You can configure environment variables in the Lambda console, CLI, or SDK and access them in your function code using environment variable placeholders. Our next interview question is, what is Amazon EFS Elastic File System and how does it provide scalable and durable file storage for EC2 instances? Your answer should be Amazon EFS is a fully managed, scalable, and durable file storage service that provides file-based storage for Amazon EC2 instances. It allows you to create POSIX compliant file systems that can be shared across multiple EC2 instances, providing scalable and durable storage for applications and workloads that require shared file storage. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is, how do you troubleshoot performance issues in an AWS environment? Your answer should be troubleshooting performance issues in an AWS environment involves monitoring resource utilization metrics, analyzing logs, setting up CloudWatch alarms, using AWS Trusted Advisor, and leveraging other AWS monitoring and debugging tools. Our next interview question is, what are the different types of load balancers available in AWS? Your answer should be AWS offers three types of load balancers: Classic Load Balancer CLB, Application Load Balancer ALB, and Network Load Balancer NLB. Each type serves different use cases and provides specific features and functionalities. Our next interview question is, what is AWS CloudFormation and how is it used? Your answer should be AWS CloudFormation is a service that allows you to provision and manage AWS infrastructure as code. It uses templates to define the resources and their configurations, enabling you to create, update, and delete entire stacks of AWS resources in an automated and repeatable manner. Our next interview question is: how can you monitor costs and uses in AWS? Your answer should be: you can monitor costs and uses in AWS using services like AWS Cost Explorer, AWS Budgets, AWS Cost and Uses Report, and AWS Trusted Advisor. These services provide insights into your AWS spending, help you set budgets, and optimize your resource uses to minimize costs. Our next interview question is: what is AWS CloudTrail and how does it work? Your answer should be: AWS CloudTrail is a service that enables governance, compliance, operational auditing, and risk auditing of your AWS account. It records API calls and related events made by or on behalf of your AWS account and delivers log files to an Amazon S3 bucket for storage and analysis. Our next interview question is: how do you ensure high availability in an AWS environment? Your answer should be: high availability in an AWS environment can be achieved by distributing resources across multiple availability zones (AZs), using auto-scaling to maintain the desired number of instances, configuring health checks and alarms, and leveraging services like Amazon Route 53 for DNS routing and failover. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon RDS and how does it differ from Amazon Aurora? Your answer should be: Amazon RDS, that is Relational Database Service, is a fully managed relational database service that supports multiple database engines like MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, and Oracle. Amazon Aurora is a MySQL and PostgreSQL compatible relational database built for the cloud, offering higher performance, scalability, and availability compared to traditional database engines. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how do you optimize data transfer costs between Amazon S3 and Amazon EC2 instances? Your answer should be: data transfer cost between Amazon S3 and Amazon EC2 instances can be optimized by using Amazon S3 transfer acceleration for faster data transfer over long distances, using Amazon CloudFront for caching and distributing content closer to end users, and leveraging Amazon S3 Direct Connect for dedicated and predictable network connectivity. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Elastic Container Registry (ECR) and how does it facilitate container image management? Your answer should be AWS Elastic Container Registry ECR is a fully managed Docker Container Registry service that makes it easy to store, manage, and deploy Docker container images. It integrates seamlessly with Amazon ECS, Amazon EKS, and AWS Code Pipeline, allowing you to securely store and deploy container images for your applications. Our next interview question is: how do you configure Amazon CloudWatch logs retention policies for log data management? Your answer should be Amazon CloudWatch logs retention policies allow you to specify the retention period for log data, defining how long log events are retained in CloudWatch logs. You can configure retention policies at the log group level, specifying retention periods ranging from days to indefinitely based on your data retention requirements. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Code Commit and how does it facilitate secure version control for source code? Your answer should be AWS Code Commit is a fully managed source control service that provides secure and scalable Git-based version control for storing and managing source code repositories. It integrates seamlessly with other AWS services like AWS Code Pipeline and AWS Code Build, enabling continuous integration and deployment workflows. Our next interview question is: how do you automate instance provisioning and configuration management using AWS Ops Works? Your answer should be AWS OpsWorks allows you to automate instance provisioning and configuration management using Ceph or Puppet cookbooks. You can define custom recipes and run lists to configure instances based on predefined configurations, automate application deployment, and manage infrastructure as code using OpsWorks stacks. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon ECS capacity provider and how does it optimize container placement and scaling? Your answer should be Amazon ECS capacity provider is a feature that allows you to specify the infrastructure capacity to use for running ECS tasks and services. It optimizes container placement and scaling by dynamically allocating tasks to available capacity across multiple EC2 instances, types, and auto-scaling groups, ensuring optimal resource utilization and availability. Our next interview question is: how do you implement cost allocation tags in AWS to track resource uses and optimize costs? Your answer should be cost allocation tags in AWS allow you to assign metadata tags to AWS resources, such as EC2 instances, S3 buckets, and RDS databases to track resource uses and optimize costs. You can use tags to categorize resources, allocate costs to specific business units or projects, and analyze cost allocation using AWS Cost Explorer. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how can you securely transfer data to and from AWS? Your answer should be: data can be securely transferred to and from AWS using encryption protocols like SSL TLS for data in transit and services like AWS Direct Connect and AWS VPN for secure connectivity to AWS resources. Additionally, AWS provides services like AWS Key Management Service (KMS) for encryption of data at rest. Our next interview question is: what are AWS Trusted Advisor checks and how can they help optimize your AWS environment? Your answer should be: AWS Trusted Advisor checks are automated checks performed by AWS Trusted Advisor to analyze your AWS environment and provide recommendations for cost optimization, security, performance, and fault tolerance. They help identify opportunities to improve your AWS infrastructure based on best practices and AWS guidelines. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Elastic Beanstalk and how does it simplify application deployment? Your answer should be: AWS Elastic Beanstalk is a platform as a service PaaS that simplifies the deployment, management, and scaling of web applications and services. It automatically handles the deployment details, capacity provisioning, load balancing, scaling, and application health monitoring, allowing developers to focus on writing code. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Cloud Formation Change Sets and how do they work? Your answer should be: AWS Cloud Formation Change Sets allow you to preview the changes to your AWS infrastructure before executing them. They provide a way to understand the impact of changes, including any additions, modifications, or deletions of resources, and enable you to review and approve them before applying them to your stack. Our next interview question is: how do you optimize storage costs in Amazon S3? Your answer should be: storage costs in Amazon S3 can be optimized by using lifecycle policies to automatically transition data to lower cost storage classes like S3 Standard IA, that is infrequent access, and S3 Glacier, enabling provisioning and using compression techniques to reduce storage consumption. Our next interview question is: what is AWS CloudWatch Logs and how is it used for log management? Your answer should be: AWS CloudWatch Logs is a log management service that allows you to collect, monitor, and store log files generated by your AWS resources and applications. It enables you to centralize logs, perform real-time analysis, set up alarms based on log events, and archive log data for long-term retention. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how do you optimize performance for Amazon DynamoDB databases? Your answer should be: performance for Amazon DynamoDB databases can be optimized by selecting appropriate partition keys and sort keys for even distribution of workload, designing efficient table schemas, using DynamoDB Accelerator DAX for caching read requests, and enabling adaptive capacity to handle unpredictable workloads. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Elastic Beanstalk Environment Tiers and how do they differ? Your answer should be: AWS Elastic Beanstalk supports two environment tiers: Web Server Environment Tier for web applications and Worker Environment Tier for background processing tasks. Web Server Environment Tier provides load balancing, auto-scaling, and web server configuration, while Worker Environment Tier is optimized for long-running background tasks. Our next interview question is: how do you monitor and troubleshoot performance issues in Amazon EC2 instances? Your answer should be: performance issues in Amazon EC2 instances can be monitored and troubleshooted using tools like Amazon CloudWatch for monitoring instance metrics, CloudWatch logs for logging and analyzing application logs, AWS Systems Manager for viewing instance performance and configuration, and third-party monitoring tools for deeper insights. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Cost Explorer and how does it help with cost analysis? Your answer should be: AWS Cost Explorer is a tool that allows you to visualize, analyze, and manage your AWS costs and uses over time. It helps with cost analysis by providing customizable reports, cost breakdowns by service or resource, cost for forecasts, and cost saving recommendations to optimize your AWS spending. Our next interview question is: how do you implement data encryption for Amazon S3 buckets? Your answer should be: data encryption for Amazon S3 buckets can be implemented by enabling server-side encryption using AWS Key Management Service KMS managed keys or customer-provided keys, enabling bucket policies to require encryption for objects, and using bucket policies to restrict access to encrypted objects. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Lambda destination and how does it facilitate asynchronous invocation? Your answer should be: AWS Lambda destination is a feature that allows you to configure destination for asynchronous invocations of Lambda functions. It facilitates asynchronous invocation by enabling you to specify a target for processing invocation results such as Amazon S3, Amazon SQS, or AWS Lambda functions for processing asynchronous function results. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how does Amazon RDS multi-AZ deployment enhance database availability? Your answer should be Amazon RDS multi-AZ, that is multi-availability zone deployment enhances database availability by automatically replicating the primary database instance to a standby instance in a different availability zone AZ. In the event of a failure, RDS automatically fails over to the standby instance, minimizing downtime. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon CloudFront and how does it improve content delivery? Your answer should be Amazon CloudFront is a content delivery network CDN service provided by AWS. It distributes your content globally through a network of edge locations, reducing latency and improving the performance of your web applications and content delivery to end users. Our next interview question is: how do you manage secrets and sensitive data in AWS? Your answer should be secrets and sensitive data in AWS can be managed using AWS Secrets Manager, a service that enables you to securely store, retrieve, and manage sensitive information such as API keys, passwords, and certificates. AWS Key Management Service (KMS) can also be used to encrypt and manage keys for data encryption. Our next interview question is: what are AWS organizations and how are they used for managing multiple AWS accounts? Your answer should be AWS Organizations is a service that enables centralized management of multiple AWS accounts within an organization. It allows you to create and manage accounts, apply policies for governance and compliance, and consolidate billing and cost management across accounts. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Systems Manager and how is it used for managing EC2 instances? Your answer should be AWS Systems Manager is a management service that helps you automate administrative tasks and manage your AWS infrastructure. It provides features such as run command for executing commands on EC2 instances, state manager for configuring instances, and patch manager for automating patching of operating systems. Our next interview question is: how does AWS Data Sync facilitate data transfer between on-premises storage and AWS? Your answer should be AWS Data Sync is a data transfer service that simplifies and accelerates moving large amounts of data between on-premises storage and AWS storage services like Amazon S3, Amazon EFS, and Amazon FSx. It optimizes data transfer, handles data disruptions, and verifies data integrity during transfer. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how do you monitor and troubleshoot performance issues in Amazon Redshift clusters? Your answer should be: performance issues in Amazon Redshift clusters can be monitored and troubleshooted using tools like Amazon CloudWatch for monitoring cluster metrics, Redshift Query Monitoring for analyzing query execution times and resource utilization, and system views like STL_query and SVV_table_info for identifying performance bottlenecks. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Cloud Formation change sets and how do they help with infrastructure changes? Your answer should be: AWS Cloud Formation change sets allows you to preview proposed changes to your AWS infrastructure before applying them. They help with infrastructure changes by providing a way to understand the impact of changes, review the changes, and approve them before executing them to ensure predictable and controlled deployments. Our next interview question is: how do you implement automated backups and recovery for Amazon Aurora databases? Your answer should be: automated backups and recovery for Amazon Aurora databases can be implemented by enabling automated backups, specifying backup retention periods, taking manual snapshots for point-in-time recovery, configuring cross-region replication for disaster recovery, and testing backup and recovery procedures regularly. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon Elastic Block Store EBS volume encryption and how does it help with data security? Your answer should be: Amazon Elastic Block Store EBS volume encryption allows you to encrypt data at rest on EBS volumes using AWS Key Management Service KMS managed keys. It helps with data security by providing data encryption at the volume level, ensuring data confidentiality and integrity even if the volume is detached from the instance. Our next interview question is: how do you implement high availability and fault tolerance for Amazon EC2 instances? Your answer should be: high availability and fault tolerance for Amazon EC2 instances can be implemented by using auto-scaling groups with multiple EC2 instances distributed across multiple availability zones (AZs), configuring elastic load balancing for distributing traffic across instances, and enabling multi-AZ deployment for RDS databases. Our next interview question is: what is AWS WAF, that is Web Application Firewall, and how does it help protect web applications? Your answer should be: AWS WAF is a web application firewall that helps protect web applications from common web exploits and attacks such as SQL injection, cross-site scripting, XSS, and DDoS attacks. It allows you to define customizable rules and conditions to block or allow traffic based on criteria like IP addresses, HTTP headers, or request patterns. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: what are AWS config rules and how do they help enforce compliance? Your answer should be AWS config rules are customizable rules that you can define to automatically evaluate the configuration of AWS resources and detect deviations from desired configurations. They help enforce compliance with organizational policies, industry regulations, and security best practices by identifying non-compliant resources and triggering notifications or remediation actions. Our next interview question is: how does AWS Direct Connect facilitate private connectivity to AWS resources? Your answer should be AWS Direct Connect is a dedicated network connection service that enables you to establish a private, high bandwidth connection between your data center, office, or co-location environment and AWS. It bypasses the public internet, providing a more consistent and reliable network experience for accessing AWS resources. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon ECS, that is Elastic Container Service, and how does it work? Your answer should be Amazon ECS is a fully managed container orchestration service provided by AWS. It allows you to run and manage Docker container at scale, providing features for scheduling, scaling, monitoring, and deploying containerized applications across a cluster of EC2 instances. Our next interview question is: how do you ensure data durability in Amazon S3? Your answer should be data durability in Amazon S3 is ensured by storing objects redundantly across multiple devices and facilities within a region. Amazon S3 provides a durability SLA of 99.9999%, that is 11 nines, ensuring that your data is highly resilient and protected against hardware failures and data corruption. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Lambda layers and how do they simplify code reuse? Your answer should be AWS Lambda layers allows you to package and reuse common libraries, dependencies, and runtime components across multiple Lambda functions. They simplify code reuse, reduce duplication, and enable you to manage and version shared code separately from your Lambda functions. Our next interview question is: what is AWS OpsWorks and how does it simplify application management? Your answer should be AWS OpsWorks is a configuration management service that helps you automate the deployment, configuration, and management of applications on AWS infrastructure. It provides features like Ceph and Puppet integration, lifecycle management, monitoring, and auto-healing to simplify application management. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certification, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: what is AWS S3 Object Lock and how does it help enforce data retention and compliance requirements? Your answer should be AWS S3 Object Lock is a feature that allows you to lock objects in S3 buckets to prevent them from being deleted or modified for a specified retention period. It helps enforce data retention and compliance requirements by providing write once read many WORM protection for objects, ensuring data immutability and compliance with regulatory requirements. Our next interview question is: how do you monitor and troubleshoot AWS Lambda functions for performance and errors? Your answer should be AWS Lambda functions can be monitored and troubleshooted using CloudWatch logs for logging functions invocations and errors, CloudWatch metrics for monitoring function performance metrics, AWS X-ray for tracing and analyzing function execution, and AWS Lambda Insights for visualizing function performance and identifying bottlenecks. Our next interview question is: what is Amazon S3 cross-region replication CRR and how does it help with disaster recovery and data resilience? Your answer should be Amazon S3 cross-region replication CRR is a feature that automatically replicates objects from a source S3 bucket to a destination S3 bucket in a different AWS region. It helps with disaster recovery and data resilience by providing a secondary copy of data in a different region, ensuring data availability and durability in the event of regional failures or disasters. Our next interview question is: how do you implement automated scaling for Amazon ECS Elastic Container Service clusters? Your answer should be automated scaling for Amazon ECS clusters can be implemented by configuring Amazon ECS auto-scaling policies based on CloudWatch metrics such as CPU utilization or memory utilization to automatically scale the number of ECS tasks or services up or down in response to changing workload demands. Our next interview question is: what is AWS Trusted Advisor Cost Optimization and how does it help identify cost saving opportunities? Your answer should be AWS Trusted Advisor Cost Optimization is a feature that analyzes your AWS uses and provides recommendations to help reduce costs, improve performance, and increase security. It helps identify cost saving opportunities by analyzing cost allocation tags, identifying idle resources, and recommending right sizing of EC2 instances and EBS volumes. Our next interview question is, what is Amazon Redshift and how does it differ from traditional relational databases? Your answer should be Amazon Redshift is a fully managed data warehousing service that allows you to run complex SQL queries on large datasets. It differs from traditional relational databases by using columnar storage, massively parallel processing (MPP), and data compression techniques to achieve high performance and scalability for analytics workloads. If you are preparing for any AWS-based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below. Today we are discussing the interview questions and answers for AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. You can download the complete list of AWS-based questions from the link provided in the description. Our interview question based on SysOps Administrator Associate is: how do you configure Amazon Route 53 health checks and failover routing for high availability? Your answer should be Amazon Route 53 Health Checks allows you to monitor the health of endpoints such as EC2 instances or load balancers and route traffic based on health checks status. You can configure health checks to perform periodic checks, define health check thresholds, and configure failover routing policies to direct traffic to healthy endpoints. Our next interview question is, what is AWS DMS, that is Database Migration Service, and how does it facilitate database migration to AWS? Your answer should be AWS DMS is a managed service that helps you migrate databases to AWS quickly and securely. It supports homogeneous and heterogeneous database migrations, including on-premises to AWS, AWS to AWS, and AWS to on-premises migrations with minimal downtime and data loss. Our next interview question is, how do you optimize data transfer costs between AWS regions and on-premises environments? Your answer should be data transfer cost between AWS regions and on-premises environments can be optimized by using AWS Direct Connect for dedicated and predictable network connectivity, enabling AWS data transfer acceleration for faster data transfer over long distances, and leveraging AWS Snowball for offline data transfer. Our next interview question is, what is AWS Config Rules remediation and how does it help maintain compliance and security? Your answer should be AWS Config Rules remediation automatically remediates non-compliant resources detected by AWS Config Rules to maintain compliance and security in your AWS environment. It allows you to define automated remediation actions such as resource deletion, tag enforcement, or configuration changes to address non-compliance issues automatically. Our next interview question is, what are AWS EBS Elastic blocks store volume types, and how do they differ in terms of performance and cost? Your answers should be AWS EBS volume types include general purpose SSD, GP2, provisioned IOPS SSD IO1, cold HDD SC1, and throughput optimized HDD ST1. They differ in terms of performance characteristics such as IOPS and throughput and cost efficiency, allowing you to choose the appropriate volume type based on workload requirements. Our next interview question is, how do you implement cross-account access and resource sharing in AWS IAM? Your answer should be cross-account access and resource sharing in AWS IAM can be implemented by creating IAM roles with cross-account trust relationships, specifying permissions policies to define access permissions, and using AWS Resource Access Manager RAM to share resources such as Amazon S3 buckets or Amazon RDS snapshots across AWS accounts. If you are preparing for any AWS based certifications, you can download the complete list of valid, tried and tested questions and answers from the link provided in the description below.